Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. Good to be together this morning. There is no reason for you to know this. This is some insider talk. You would not know this unless you're in church all the time, but there is always a post-Mother's Day slump for pastors. There's something about Mother's Day. Everyone shows up at church, and then you don't come. So that means that you guys are my favorites. Thank you for being here today. And I am very excited to continue in our series. If you've not been with us, we've been in a series where we have just called it Where Did They All Go? We're looking at all the different disciples, and then, of course, the apostles, and what happened after the resurrection. Like, some of them are prominently displayed all through the Gospels. Some are a little less mentioned, but we do have church history as well that describes kind of what they did. And in doing this series, what I'm hoping is that you start to see the sort of different temperaments, the different ways that people are built by God, and that every different kind of temperament can follow Jesus. Did anybody know who we started with? We started with Peter, that's right. And then who did we do? Andrew, who no one knows anything about. But it was interesting. He's an interesting guy, kind of a little more personally focused, a little more individual. And then last week I sort of cheated. Do you remember who I did? Yeah, Salome. So that was the mother of James and John. It was Mother's Day. So creative, right? Nobody's impressed with me. Okay, but we're going to continue through that vein, and we're going to look at James and we'll look at John next week. And when we look at James, you saw the text a moment ago, and really we also look at John, we see an intense human being. You might even say a zealous human being. Do you know any intense people? This is when you're not supposed to look at your spouse, if it's your spouse. Do you know intense people? Like just everything has a little more energy than it needs to. You know someone like this. And then it's asking, how does that show up? Like what brings about that energy? What makes them intense? We had a neighbor at a previous house we lived at that was like the Broncos fan. Like the Broncos fan. They had outfitted all their cars as like Bronco mobiles. He'd actually purchased an old ambulance and turned it into a party ambulance for the Broncos. Tailgating at Broncos games. This is the most interesting part. Did not have tickets. No tickets to the game, but it was like they were there for the game, unable to go to the game. And they just could not have been more into it. There was screaming, there was yelling, intense. Do you know somebody like this? Right? Like just intense people that it's just like a little extra all the time. And they usually, that's going to be either with like a sports team. Anyone ever known someone that's like just really into a band? Like just so into a band. I have different friends who do music. Every single one of the friends I know that are in a band that tour, there's a few fans that are at every single show. Every single show. So like my one friend's a man, there are 3 girls that sit in the very front at every single show. I don't know how to say this generously. They are strange. They're strange people. Like to talk to them, they're strange. I don't even know how someone affords that. Like just the cost of being at the front of like every show, everywhere. They're out front. They know where the band stays. So they are out front of the hotel to get signatures at every single venue, on every tour stop. So, I'm assuming, I was just watching the room to make sure there wasn't anyone like that here. Like there might be one of you like, yeah, obviously, this is awesome. So we know intense people. We know people that are like this. And of course, you're going to have people that are like this in faith. James, as far as we can tell, is an intense guy like this. The passages that we have of him seem to mirror a lot of the passages of Peter. If you remember, we looked at Peter. Peter was impetuous and intense, but he was very inquisitive. He was really, really extroverted. We don't get the impression that James is quite as extroverted, but he is, at least as intense. And when you read about the different passages that include James and John are named by Jesus. Jesus names them the sons of thunder. Thunder. What's next? No, nobody. Okay. I don't know people of a certain age in the room, but anyway, okay, so thunder, nobody knows thunder. Yeah, come on. Thank you. You and me. Are we that old? No one even knows. I mean, have you not been to a sports event? Okay, so sons of thunder. I mean, so they are intense enough that Jesus is like, I have a name for you, sons of thunder. And yet what we realize of James and John is however intense, however, out there they were, they match some of Peter and Andrew's story insofar as that they were some of the earliest followers of Jesus. Andrew, of course, is the first. He goes and he finds Peter, and he goes and he finds James and John. And the language that Andrew uses, which you can find in Mark chapter 1, to refer to Jesus, seems to indicate that James and John had already been following John the Baptist. So they were intense enough that they were already looking for God. And then when John the Baptist says, that's the guy that I've been preparing the way for, they flip teams. And they start to follow Jesus. So their intensity isn't just sort of, rabid. It's focused. James is a pretty focused guy, apparently. And from everything we learned from church history, he was a pretty big, strong dude, really powerful guy. Peter was always sort of known through the early church as being pretty powerful, and John is known for being a little more slight, little guy, younger guy. But it turns out John was faster at running, which he tells you in the resurrection account. He pretty much says, without saying it directly, Peter's a little fat. Because he tells you in the resurrection account, I beat Peter to the tomb because he's fat. And I'm quick and slender and young. And the reason I bring up those guys together is they're some of the earliest followers. But Jesus then takes the three, and throughout the Gospels, it does always come down to the three. It's Peter, James, and John. Regularly through the Gospels, Jesus will siphon these three off for very particular moments where he wants to show them something. And nearly always when he does this, he shows them something, but he doesn't let them tell other people. One example is in Mark chapter 5, where Jesus raises Jairus' daughter. Do you know this story? The story goes that Jairus, who works for the temple, comes to Jesus and says, my daughter's dying, can you come pray for her? And Jesus says, sure, let's go see her. And as they go, the crowd's pressing around. And it says that that's the woman with the issue of blood touches Jesus' robe in the middle of this crowd. And Jesus stops and says, who touched me? And his disciples go, a lot of people touched you. There's a huge crowd. And Jesus says, no, somebody touched me. And this woman goes, it was me. I touched you. I just was so desperate. I needed healing. I reached out and I grabbed your robe. I just knew if I could just touch the edge of your robe, I would be healed. And I was. And while he's having this conversation with this woman, someone in the crowd comes to Jairus and says, your daughter's dead. Leave the teacher alone. So he gets distracted, and Jesus turns to Jairus and says, well, everything's possible to those who believe. And let's go see your daughter. Now, Jesus then dismisses the crowd, but he also dismisses the disciples with the exception of the three, Peter, James, and John. Peter, James, and John get to walk into the house with Jesus, and he lifts her up and raises her from the dead. But in this weird passage in Mark chapter 5, he looks at the three and says, don't tell anybody. You're not allowed to talk about it. I just want you to imagine how that goes. Peter, who can't shut up, James and John, who are apparently pretty intense guys, now have to go back to the rest of the crew, and they're like, what happened in there? Can't talk about it. What do you mean you can't talk about it? Can't talk about it. Jesus said we're not allowed to talk about it. Well, why was it you guys? I don't know. What happened in there? I don't know. I can imagine them wanting to say, you could just go look for yourself. I'm not allowed to tell you, just go check. But not allowed to tell. Okay, the same thing happens in Matthew chapter 17. Jesus pulls the three aside and says, I'm going to take you up to this mountain. I want to show you something. I'll read you that one just briefly. Matthew 17. After 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, and led them up to a high mountain by themselves. There he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as the light. Just then, there appeared before them Moses and Elijah talking with Jesus. And again, here's Peter. Love Peter. Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, I'll put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. This is my favorite modifier in the entire text. Verse 5, while he was still speaking, he's like, a bright cloud covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, this is my son with whom I love and with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. So God interrupts Peter. When the disciples heard this, they fell face down to the ground, terrified, but Jesus came and touched them. Get up, he said, don't be afraid. When they looked up, they saw no one except for Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus instructed them, don't tell anyone what you've seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. The disciples asked him, why then do the teachers of the law say Elijah must come first? Jesus replied, to be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things. But I tell you, Elijah has already come. They didn't recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood he was talking to them about John the Baptist. So, what we learn through many of the interactions is that for whatever reason, and I think we'll talk about that more in a minute, Peter, James, and John had a special vantage point into Jesus. The last really special part, and there's more than one other one, but would be in Mark chapter 14. I don't have time to read the whole text to you, but in Mark chapter 14, it's when Jesus is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. He knows he's about to be captured. He's going to be tried and killed. He's told them this is going to happen. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, he takes aside, guess how many people to just be with him alone? I'll let you guess. It's 3. Which 3 do you think it is? We're seeing if you're listening right now. Quick quiz. Which 3 did he take with him? Peter, James, and John. That's right. See, guys, we're doing this together. Pulls them aside and says, will you keep watch with me and let's pray? And of course, they don't. They fall asleep. He comes back and he begs them, why are you falling asleep? Will you just pray with me? And they're like, it's really tired. I'm tired. It's late. And then he goes away, and he comes back, and he finds them sleeping again. So, in multiple occasions, Peter, James, and John are carrying with them information and experiences that other people have not seen or had. Why? Now, we don't know for sure. Nothing in the text tells us why. Why these three? Why every time the same three? I mean, why not rotate the three? Right? I mean, have you ever told your kids, like, it's not nice to play favorites? You know, you should invite everybody to the party. Have you ever done that? You ever made your kids invite even the kid they don't like? Or has your kid got invited and you can tell, oh, you're the one they don't like? But anyway, so, like, I don't think you hang out with that kid. Their mom probably made them invite you. You know, like, we're not supposed to play favorites, right? Except for that's what Jesus does. It turns out Jesus did roll with a clique. And he did have a clique inside the clique. And he was investing in them in a very intentional way. He let them see things and hear things that nobody else saw. Now, to be fair, he did say, you're allowed to tell people this later. It could just be strategic, like he knew that people shouldn't hear everything at once. But why these three? Why over and over? Well, there's other passages where we learn about James. We read one just a moment ago. Let me read it to you again. Luke chapter 9, I think this is an interesting indicator. As the time approached for him to be taken up to heaven, Jesus resolutely set out for Jerusalem. And he sent messengers on ahead who went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But the people there did not welcome him because he was headed for Jerusalem. If you don't know the background, the Samaritans and the Jews did not relate with one another. There was all kinds of tension and there was mess in this time. And so to have a group of Jews just sort of like rolling through town was something that you would generally avoid. Like, we shouldn't talk to those people. But Jesus goes straight through, and he sends people ahead, almost like, you know, a presidential delegation would send people to, like, prepare the meeting where you're going to speak or something, right? And that's what he's doing. And this Samaritan village is like, we don't want to hang out with Jews. We don't care what this is. And this makes James and John angry. They're upset because actually Jesus has already been doing a ton of ministry in Samaria. He's already demonstrated that he cares about these people. And you can imagine James and John are like, who do you guys think you are? What do you think you're doing? How dare you reject Jesus for all the things that he's done? And so I love the way that it goes. It says they didn't welcome him because he's headed for Jerusalem. But then when the disciples, James and John, saw this, they asked, Lord, do you want us to call fire down from heaven to destroy them? Okay, like, the amount of things wrong with this are difficult to enumerate. Yeah, it makes sense. See, they had already seen a bunch of miracles. I mean, we've described some of the things. They've seen Jesus transfigured. They've seen a girl raised from the dead. They've seen people healed. They've seen the blind see and the lame walk. These are guys that are walking around with a certain amount of power, and they know it. And they are kind of intense people about the Bible. They know that God does judge cities, whole places, when the right people are not received. So they know this is the kind of thing God can do. We are moving in power. This has to be dealt with. Now, there's a few things really wrong with this passage. One, that they think they can do this. Like that God would be like, yes, let the fire fall. The fact that they think that'll work says something skewed in their minds. Second, that somehow they think that's going to be the way Jesus wants it to go. There's some argument by commentaries that they're seeing this as the fulfillment of the kingdom in the way that their people would have understood at the time, meaning that Jesus was actually headed to Jerusalem to rally an army and to overthrow Rome and to take over. So in one sense, they're saying, if we're going to kill everybody who opposes God anyway, why not get the party started now? Because that's where we're headed. That's what we're about to do. Jesus pauses and goes, that's not what we're doing. Stop. I mean, listen how it ends. Jesus turned and rebuked them. No. And then they went to another village. Okay, so There's like, do you want us called on fire for him? He's like, no. Why would you say that? Let's go this way. And they're like, all right. And they just walk on. Now, as much as this seems entirely stupid, and I just enumerated all the things that are wrong with it, I want to remind you that these are the three he chooses to put closest to him. It seems, and again, we can't say this definitively. The Bible doesn't say it directly, but I think we can infer a couple things. It seems as though God likes passion. God chooses zealous people. God likes and will work with intensity. And he draws that intensity close to himself so that he can redeem it and turn it towards something else. It seems as though of the group, maybe the only other person that maybe is really zealous is Simon the Zealot. But of the group, these are three of the most intense. And he pulls them right towards the center. Could it be because they're the first people? Could it be because they seem to be more focused on sort of their heritage? I don't know. It could be any number of things. Maybe it's a combination of them. But whatever it is, the zealousness of these guys, the intensity of these guys, seems to be something that is prominent and that Jesus seems to appreciate. It's worth us pausing to ask ourselves, how much passion are we comfortable with? Like, how much passion are you comfortable with? Like, how much excitement can you manage? Some of you right now like, don't do it, Jay. I mean, does excitement or passion make you nervous, anxious, excited? I don't know. I've often heard the little joke that, like, when you call someone a Jesus freak, or if you think that someone is super spiritual, all that means is they probably love Jesus more than you. I don't know about you, but I find it somewhat troubling that we can be excited about everything else other than Jesus. People can shout and be pumped about their sports teams. The amount of how much my Facebook feed and Twitter feed is filled with people passionate about some political persuasion, some sports team, some agitation they have around some cause, how excited specifically Coloradoans get about like essential oils. Like the amount of things people can be excited about, passionate about, pleading with people about, desperate for, that don't have anything to do with Jesus. As though somehow that's the real plot. The real plot's a political plot. The real plot is a passionate, like, fan-based life. And this thing with Jesus is a life enhancement program. When what the scriptures seem to make a case for is that the thing with Jesus is like the whole thing. Like the story of the Bible makes a case that this is what all of human history is for. To put it more directly, what would you be prepared to be a fool for? Like, you're going to look stupid doing something, which, by the way, you already do. All of you look stupid from time to time. It's just a question of what for. Do you know that? So you're like, I never look stupid. That's not true. But you all look stupid for some reason. What are you prepared to be a fool for? Is it for your own dignity? Is it for your workplace? Is it for what? For your family? What are you prepared to be a fool for? And that also shows you where your passion comes from. I've always been fascinated at how many times I'm with people who are new to faith or new to some awakening in their life with God, and how they are prepared to be insane in a way that actually scares me. They recently come to Christ, and all of a sudden they're just like, I'm telling everybody about Jesus. They suddenly realize that like God can heal the sick, and they're like, we just got to pray for everybody. And they just don't even think about it. They're just like, well, obviously that's what we're doing. And who is it that tends to try to tamp them down? It's not generally the world out there, it's the world in here. It's church people, it's religious people who are nervous, like, just like relax. I remember when I first came to Christ, I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit, all these guys that were like talking to me about Jesus. I remember we would go to restaurants and I would share my faith with the server like every single time. Like, do you have a life with God? Have you ever considered a life with God? And I have these nice youth group guys with me like, please don't. Not again. Please don't do this again. And I'd be like, why not? Like, all they can say is no. What's the worst that's going to happen? They're like, the worst that's going to happen is we're with you. And we look stupid. Like, but people come to know Jesus if you just offer them an opportunity. There might be any number of you in the room here today that you're here because somebody took a risk telling you about Jesus. You might even still be considering a life with Jesus. And we're all just trying to be too careful to not give you an opportunity to know that there is a God that gave his life for you. He rose from the dead, he's ascended, and he loves you more than you could ever imagine. That is what is true. And yet we're going to all be too careful to just say it, even in church. By the amount of times I've been in church environments, specifically the kind that we lead in the Vineyard, where somebody has an encounter with the Holy Spirit, or they see someone physically healed, and all of a sudden they're like, we must pray for everyone. And you watch everyone around be like, settle down. Just breathe a little bit. I remember we had a prayer night, a prayer and worship night. In that night, a dude came to know Jesus, had been an addict, come to know Jesus, had this encounter with God, and saw healing. He saw someone healed as he prayed for him. It's like a small group. And he calls me, this is like, on like a Wednesday. He calls me 2 nights later, it's Friday night, and this phone number I don't recognize keeps ringing my phone. Finally, I pick it up. I'm like, hello, you keep calling us. Hey, this is Mike. I go, oh, Mike, hey, how'd you get this number? First question. And I talked to some people in the group, and they gave me your number. I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, I got to talk to you. I go, what? He goes, so I'm at this apartment complex over near the church, and I got all these people at this barbecue. 4 of them giving their life to Christ. 3 of them got healed. And I don't know what to do now. Can you come over here? And I was like, now? He's like, right now. Like, it's happening now. We're all in the courtyard now. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I have things I'm doing. He's like, the real truth is I was doing literally nothing. But I didn't want to do that. So I went over there, and sure enough, there's all these people, and all these things are happening. And I was like, how did you do this? He goes, well, a long time ago, I did door-to-door meat sales. And as I went home from that night, I thought, if I could sell meat to people, I could probably just tell them about Jesus. Maybe I should just try that. It just occurred to me. So I just went to the apartment, started knocking on the door and saying, do you have any pain in your body that I could pray for? And would you like to know Jesus? And I was like, how did that go? He goes, oh, it was a disaster. Like 85% of the people were like, no, I don't want to go away. He goes, but there were a few that let me pray. A few got healed, and a few gave their life to Christ. And look, there's like 6 people here. And I remember driving home being like, that's so cool and utterly terrifying. Like, what's my job? Am I supposed to stop him? Am I supposed to support this? Like, no. To be fair, my dear brother Mike needed to be tempered. And that is part of the discipleship. But can I just tell you as a pastor, I would love to have a church full of people who are so passionate we're trying to figure out how to temper one another. Do you think that's the problem we have with the faith that we have in Jesus Christ? We're so clear, we're so passionate, we're so brave that we spend our time looking at one another going, hey, can we just talk about how to do that in a better way? Do you think that's the problem we have? Or do you think it's more the opposite problem? We're trying really hard to try to persuade people to even say the name of Jesus. Believe that God might speak in any kind of way or do anything. These guys, at the very least, believed that the power of God was real and that God was dealing with people on the earth in real time. It led them to want to burn a village to the ground. Okay, so that part, not as great, okay? Needed some discipleship. I'm not saying, therefore, let's be James. I am saying Jesus looks at people like that and says, I can work with this. I can work with this. These are the kinds of people I can work with. The very bottom line I would want to say to you today is simply this. If you have a boring life with Jesus, it's not because he's boring. If you have a boring life with Jesus, it's probably because you're boring. I'll just give you one experiment you can try. Do this 5 times this week and let's see what happens. Say these words 5 times in someone's presence. Can I pray for you right now? 5 times this week. Out and about. Can I pray for you right now? If they say no 5 times, you accomplished your assignment. I will bet you almost anything they will not say no 5 times. Can I pray for you right now? And when they say yes, you'll be like, what have I done? What have I done? Now I must do this? I don't want to do this. And that alone will wake you up. Frankly, if they say 5 times they say no, even that'll wake you up a little bit. Because it means you're living in the world as though God is alive and active. What we learn about James is he ends up after the resurrection, after Pentecost. Apparently what we learn is he does most of his ministry in Spain. There's churches that they believe that he helped plant and start. He got all the way up into Spain. He was coming back to Jerusalem for one of the feasts, and because the Roman Empire as well as the temple had heard about what James was doing, they trumped up some charges and made up a case against him, one man accusing him of idolatry. And he was in a trial, and he went through the trial very graciously and kept trying to persuade the man who was accusing him, who was apparently what we believe was he was being paid to do this. He persuaded the man to consider Jesus, and the way that he persuaded him was so persuasive that that man, the man who had accused him, gave his life to Christ in the trial. The trial ended with James being beheaded alongside of the other man. This is what the church history tells us. Who knows how accurate it is? James then is the first martyr of the apostles. So that intensity led him to do all these things, but what he was known for toward the end of his life was being a gracious man who was very persuasive, warm-hearted guy. You'll learn next week from John. John is Mr. Love. He's so flipping sappy by the end of his life. The sons of thunder take all that intensity and they turn it toward the love of God. But here's the thing. God tends to steer cars that are already moving. God does not tend to steer cars that aren't moving. The question I just have for you as you think about this week is, how do I begin to ask God for more passion, for more courage, more risk, more faith? And you might be surprised that God is more active than you realized. He's more alive. He might meet you in those prayers, and all of a sudden it gets really exciting again. Amen? Why don't we stand together?